Hi everyone, I'm GREYMOND. I'm an OCD recovery coach with over 9 years of experience helping people recover from OCD. On this channel, I do daily videos discussing different aspects of OCD recovery. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Today, I wanted to talk to you about accountability. Accountability in OCD recovery plays a huge role. Today, I want to talk to you about changes in life and how these changes can affect OCD. No matter what kind of change it could be a big change, a small change, a positive or a negative one. They all play a part in OCD recovery. I can tell you, I've been doing this for almost 10 years, and pretty much every time without fail, I see that as soon as the person has some sort of a major change in their life, it makes OCD worse. It's in the beginning, as the person kind of understands how to cope with it, then they have the mechanisms to prevent that from happening. But it does impact it. I can tell you, even from looking at it from a position of comparing people who don't have a lot of changes happening during the process of recovery versus people who have a lot of changes happening during the process of recovery. People who have not a lot of stuff going on at this time recover faster generally. Of course, it has to do with a million different factors, so it's not just that. It's not, the change is not make or break. So if you plan to do something, you don't have to cancel things. That's not what I'm saying here, but you have to really understand that changes add an additional challenge to your recovery. If it's a change that's unavoidable, whether it's a pleasant change, it could be a vacation that you planned for a long time, or a job opportunity that you have that you don't want to give up, or you don't want to delay, or you can't delay it. You don't have to do any of that, right? Like, you don't have to delay, you don't have to cancel things. You can go through with it, but just make sure that you understand that you might get more thoughts because the brain will be on high alert to prevent danger from happening when you are in a very vulnerable state of the surroundings changing. That is the reason why the brain throws these thoughts at you. So going back to the theory, right, that the brain has no idea what this thought is. At some point, you reacted to the thought with fear. It sent it to you again. You reacted with fear again by protecting yourself, whether mentally just analyzing or physically doing compulsions, but you protected yourself. That sent a message to the brain that this must be an important thought. This type of signal must be important. Again, it has no idea what the thought is about, what the content is. It understands it like a computer understands the images that you're watching on the screens as ones and zeros. Doesn't understand it consciously like the way you do. It just understands that this type of signal you happen to react to. Now, not only are you, as the brain thinks of it, in, danger, life or death situation, but now you're also having changes happen in your life. So what's a brain to do? Well, it's going to send you more thoughts, pummel you with thoughts even more in order to try to protect you from this danger. Because again, it's looking at it as a life or death situation, and is trying to do everything it possibly can to get you to do the compulsion, whether mental compulsion, physical compulsion, doesn't matter. So it's going to give you a million thoughts. Maybe it's the same thought, but from a million different angles, but it's going to keep bombarding you. So a lot of the times, if say for example the person is doing the work that they're supposed to, but they're not feeling better, a lot of the time I see these kinds of changes in life playing a role. So you have to be prepared for it. Again, I'm not talking about only negative things. Yes, trauma can of course make OCD worse, but I see all the time positive things also make it worse. For example, getting married really it can really stress people out and cause OCD. Having kids, changing jobs, changing a place where they live, all of this is very, very common. So if something like this is happening with you right now, or like I said, even going on vacation, it can stress you out. So number one, whatever things you need to do in preparation for this change, try to space them out evenly. Even if it's a lot of things, very overwhelming, still try to spread them out over the course of a few days or whatever you have, maybe a few weeks. Hopefully you have not just few days, but whatever it is, try to space them out evenly throughout those days. Don't pile up everything in one day saying, well, I'll just relax the rest of the days. That's not really what's best for your mind. For your mind, it's best to always be kind of even, and also calming down from the upheaval of getting ready for something also has to be very kind of like, you know what I mean? Like give yourself almost as much to do when you were busy preparing as you are now that you're not preparing, just so the mind has even amount of things to worry about, things to think about besides OCD, and then gradually reduce. You know what I mean? There shouldn't be these like, kind of dips in one day you do a lot, the next day you do nothing. It should be pretty even. And understanding that, okay, say for example, relationship OCD. Relationship OCD is very, very common if people are going through changes in the relationship, such as, getting married, taking the next step in the relationship, having kids. All of that is very, 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 very common. I mean, that's pretty much how it goes, or at least how it starts. And again, if that's not your case, that's not necessarily always the rule, but most of the time I would say that's the rule. Or maybe say people are taking the next step in the relationship, like say, like relocating together, or purchasing property, all those kinds of things, that they can affect it, right? So try to see how this specific change affects your specific type of OCD. Or say for example, somebody in the family got sick and you have contamination OCD. You know what I mean? One can impact the other. So you're taking care of this other person, you're going to the hospital all the time, and it plays up that fear, right? So seeing, okay, this is where it's coming from. I'm doing a lot, so clearly this makes my OCD worse. This is why it's happening. I have to be prepared. And again, it comes down to disregarding. But if you are aware of what's happening, if you're aware of why it's happening, it takes the fear out, because it's a mechanical process. Why the brain is doing this? Why am I feeling worse? If you can clearly explain, this is why I'm feeling worse. Yeah, it feels super real, just like every other time, but I feel super worse because of this, this, and this. Well, it's no longer scary, right? Or at least it's a little bit less scary, because you see where it's coming from. You see the mechanical process of the brain, why it's doing this. And as long as the fear starts to go down, right, then you can fight it better. And again, it still comes down to exposure and response prevention. The thought itself, the situation, whatever is happening, that's the exposure. Whatever gives you fear, that's the exposure. Whether it's a physical situation or just a thought that you had. And then what do you do with that thought? Yes, it's coming in with fear already, built-in fear now, because your brain is used to you reacting with fear. So now it's sending it to you on autopilot. But then are you taking that initial fear that comes in at, say, like a 6 and upping it all the way up to a 10, right? By doing reactions, right? Like analyzing, rumination, physical compulsions. Or are you taking it as it came and refusing reaction, and it will stay at, say, for example, okay, say it came at an 8. It stayed at an 8, maybe went up to a 9 to try to get you, you still refused, and then it dropped down to like a 6. And maybe it stayed for a few days at a 6, and then maybe you got caught up on something else, and it can go back and forth. But this is how you do it. So when you're refusing the reaction, it doesn't mean that the thought is going to go away or the anxiety is going to go away. What you're doing is, over time, you're training your brain that this doesn't matter. So say, for example, this in the example I just gave. So at the end, so the fear came in at an 8, went up to a 9, the person refused reaction, dropped down to a 6, stayed at a 6. Now, the next time the thought comes in, similar thought comes in, the initial anxiety will most likely be lower. So when it comes in with autopilot anxiety, it won't be as high. If not that thought, then definitely the thought after that. Sometimes the brain kind of will take a few tries to get you to react, to try to get you, basically. So this is how over time you train your brain, and try to prepare yourself that it will take time. Sometimes I hear people say, well, I've done work for a day. Why am I not better? Well, that's great that you've done work for the day, but you've done the wrong thing for years. So you need to do a lot more longer than a day in order to see results. But at the same time, it's not that long. I mean, I said it years ago, my videos, because I've been doing this for a long time. You can go back to my earlier videos if you care to look. But I said it then and I say it now, and it holds true through the years, that 6 months is really a very accurate estimate of if the person is pushing and doing the work to the best of their ability. Because I can tell you throughout the years, pretty much most people's abilities are pretty similar in terms of how much they fight back. Some people fight back more in the beginning. Some people fight back more at the end. You know what I mean? It depends on, again, the circumstances of their life. If they're stressed out at a certain point, they might not you fight as much. But, overall, I would say it must even out, because I do see about 6 months holds true. And that doesn't mean that the whole 6 months is going to be terrible. Probably first 2 months is terrible, maybe three. But when your anxiety is half of what it is when you started, it's not as scary anymore. The person is much more able to disregard. They know how it goes. They know how many days it's going to take to go away based on how many days they've reacted, or how many hours versus how many hours it takes to go away. So it becomes kind of like a mundane situation. They understand the problem. They understand what's happening, why it's happening, and what needs to happen for it to stop. So that's kind of how it goes. Of course, there's people who recover. I've seen people who recover in a month, and those people really pushed, So, some people take a little bit longer than 6 months. I do see that as well, But if you count kind of on average, I would say 6 months pretty much holds true. So I hope you find my video helpful. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. Like I said, I do daily videos. If you'd like to do private recovery program with me, all the information for that is on youhaveocd.com. You can also sign up there. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.